The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Miranda Devine, the great Miranda Devine of the New York Post, one of the real reporters left in America, she who played a principal role in uncovering the truth about Hunter Biden's laptop, writing today in the New York Post, in the wake of former FBI Director James Comey's indictment, Democrats like Senator Richard Blumenthal, you know him, the guy who lied about his service in Vietnam, and Representative Eric Swalwell, you know him as well. He's the guy who got caught seeing a Chinese communist spy on the side, are issuing dark warnings with a straight face that what goes around comes around, and that anyone who cooperates with Donald Trump's vengeance prosecutions will face retribution when Democrats are back in charge. Have they forgotten the fact that Democrats tried to destroy Donald Trump and his family, tried to keep him off the ballot, tried to bankrupt him, tried to charge him with various crimes, both in Washington, D.C. And in New York City, also claimed that his holding on to classified documents, which under the Presidential Records Act he was perfectly entitled to have, it was an act of weaponization. Have they forgotten the fact that there was an illegal cabal that started on July 17th, 2017, in an Oval Office meeting in which Hillary Clinton's illicit plan to claim that the Russians had interfered with the American elections to benefit Donald Trump was born? All of these threats that if we're mean to the Democrats now, meaning if we hold them accountable for their illegal actions, in this case very specifically, I would say seditious conspiracy to engage in treason, then they will be vicious to us when and if they ever return to power. This threat falls on deaf ears because they started it. Democrats long ago weaponed the justice system against their political opponents. Miranda Devine counted the ways. On President Trump's watch, Donald Trump faced 4 separate indictments with 88 criminal charges. More than 1,500 Trump supporters were arrested and over-prosecuted in the January 6th investigation. Trump advisors Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro were jailed for contempt when they refused to testify before Nancy Pelosi's January 6th Star Chamber. I was arrested at dawn in a heavy-handed SWAT raid. Comey entrapped Trump National Security Advisor and my good friend General Michael Flynn. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and the IRS covered up Biden's massive corruption, and they jailed whistleblowers repeatedly. Conservatives of every stripe were under legal assault. The FBI spied on school board meetings and Catholics who chose to attend the Latin Mass. They also arrested and targeted parents for the mere act of attending school board meetings to protest the woke curriculum being forced on their children. FBI agents were subjected to politically motivated loyalty tests to weed out those suspected of supporting the President of the United States. Biden openly pressured Attorney General Merrick Garland to investigate Trump and to lay off his son Hunter, only he did through anonymous leaks to the New York Times rather than out in the open on Truth Social. James Comey deserves our utter contempt for the damage he did to our system of justice along with the rule of law, according to my good friend General Michael Flynn. Like Comey, General Flynn was charged with making false statements to government officials during an official proceeding. Flynn to the FBI, Comey to Congress. In January of 2017, days after Trump took office, Comey sent 2 FBI agents to visit General Flynn, the newly appointed National Security Advisor, simply to question him about legitimate phone conversations he had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak after the election. By the way, Barack Obama's national security advisor had multiple conversations with the then Russian ambassador prior to their confirmation for that position, but you see, the facts don't ever really matter here. Flynn, my good friend, was charged with making false statements to the FBI, which he denied, but when prosecutors threatened to charge his son, he unfortunately pled guilty. I sent them, Comey bragged on the violation of policy, in an on-the-stage interview with MSNBC's Nicole Wallace, a former Bush apparatchik, now stinking up the place on MSNBC. Something I wouldn't have done or gotten away with a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or even the Obama administration. But I thought, it's early enough. Let's just send a couple of guys over. The audience thought this was very funny. For General Flynn, a military veteran and patriot whose advice Trump never got the benefit of, Comey's idle abuse of power led to years of torment. General Flynn, like me, lost his home, his business, most of his savings, fighting the case before President Trump ultimately pardoned him. Even after the U.S. Justice Department moved in federal court in D.C. to dismiss the case, Judge Sullivan refused, appointing one of his cronies, a corrupt prosecutor from New York, to serve as a new special counsel to investigate General Flynn, something that Judge Sullivan had no authority to do, and for which Judge Sullivan should face articles of impeachment before the U.S. Congress. What he did to the Flynn family, the Trump administration, and to the people of America is unforgivable. General Flynn's right when he says that. And Comey should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Then Miranda Devine goes on to talk a bit about me, pointing out that I was charged with the exact same offenses as Comey. In other words, making false statements to Congress and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. And like Flynn, this was over the fake Russian collusion allegations. It wasn't until a federal judge, in a lawsuit, strangely enough brought by BuzzFeed, ordered the Department of Justice to release the fully unredacted, long-hidden final report of Robert Mueller, the special counsel, we learned that Mueller himself could not sugarcoat the fact that he actually found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part. Nonetheless, even though my charges are identical to those of former FBI Director Comey, Comey was allowed to turn himself in and then given a drop-dead date of October 9th, meaning he can saunter into the authorities and turn himself in voluntarily. In my case, there was a pre-dawn raid on January 25th, 2019, in which a heavily armed FBI SWAT team stormed my home with a CNN camera and crew to capture my arrest as my wife and I were frog-marched out in our pajamas at gunpoint. Yes, I lost my home, my savings, my insurance, even my car in the endless legal saga, which also ended only when President Trump recognized that I was being pressured, essentially, to testify falsely against him. In other words, Robert Mueller, having spent $32 million with unlimited legal authority, unlimited manpower, and unlimited staff, could find no Russian collusion because none existed. There is no better example of the two-tiered justice system than the way I was treated and the way James Comey has been treated. The judge in my case issued a broad gag order which prevented me from defending myself in public, arguing that my public defense could, quote, taint the jury pool, close quote, which of course does not explain why she left the gag order in place after my conviction and after I was sentenced. So why is there no gag order on James Comey? Why is he continued to allow to post on social media? It's a good question. As soon as he was indicted last week, Comey posted a self-righteous, self-pitying video on Instagram declaring his innocence and posing as a resistance hero. My family and I have known for years that there are costs for standing up to Donald Trump. We couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live in our knees, he said. It is interesting that Peter Navarro, another senior advisor of President Trump's first administration, was jailed last month for 4 months for defying the congressional subpoena from the January 6th committee, the first time in 40 years anyone has been sent to jail for contempt of Congress. Like me, Peter Navarro wants to know why Comey is being treated with kid gloves. In contrast to his own brutal treatment, In 2022 at Reagan National Airport, he was boarding a plane when he was handcuffed, shackled in leg irons, strip searched, and thrown into a jail cell. So how come James Comey's allowed to self-surrender when they sent 5 FBI agents to take me down? He asks. My message to Republican National Convention the day I got out of prison was simple. If we don't hold them accountable, they will do it again. And there you have it. So this idea that if we now hold those accountable for the greatest single dirty trick in American history, for a massive abuse of power that is without parallel in political or governmental history, in which they use the full authority of the U.S. government and the capabilities of our intelligence agencies to perpetrate a massive, illicit, illegal scheme to undo the results of the 2016 election, they will simply do it again. So the indictments must not just include Comey, but also, let's lay it out, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, General James Clapper, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Rod Rosenstein, and the FBI agents who stormed my home, as far as I'm concerned. There's not a martyr among them, only perpetrators. Among those who must be prosecuted are former CIA Director John Brennan, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and Democrat Senator Adam Schiff, all of them currently under current federal investigation. This is an important point, but I hate to say it, it's important not to lose perspective on the whole Comey indictment. There's no reason to get carried away. Yes, it's great that Comey was finally charged, and yes, it's great that Lindsay Halligan pulled it all together in just 3 days. That was heroic. The New York Times wrote a story about the prosecution of Comey, but somehow the New York Times failed to mention that federal prosecutor Eric Siebert had a stunning conflict of interest first revealed here on the Stone Zone. He should have recused himself because his father-in-law, his wife's father, was the godfather to FBI Director James Comey's daughter. But you won't read that in the New York Times. It didn't make their outrageous story covering all of this. If you read the New York Times story, you would believe that this is all political retribution, that there's no legitimacy to Donald Trump's claims against those who planned this illegal coup. But the declassified documents released by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, lay out the proof. That's why the New York Times is now desperate to destroy her, because everyone knows Tulsi Gabbard now has a working group looking at classified documents and other information pertaining to the 2020 election. And the false narrative that Joe Biden got 81 million votes and easily defeated Donald Trump, running on average 20% stronger in the African-American precincts in Americans' urban areas than Barack Obama, is about to be debunked across the board. And therefore, the deep state is extraordinarily nervous. That explains this New York Times story, which ran 2 days ago, which said that John Brennan's prosecution is being hampered because Tulsi Gabbard fired 37 national security apparatchiks and because she removed their security clearances. This is an egregious, outrageous lie. It is a complete falsehood. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
And he's a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Comprehensive 20-point plan that will finally bring peace to Gaza and end the hostilities between Israel and the Islamic terrorist group Hamas that have been underway since the infamous terrorist attacks carried out on October 7th, 2023. Listen to President Trump.
To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others, and they'll be named over the next few days, and it'll be quite the board. Working, everybody wants to be on it now. I don't know if that had anything to do. They named me and everybody else wanted to be on it. I guess they figure, well, he's a soft touch. He'll be easy to deal with. Working with the World Bank and others, it will be responsible for recruiting and training a new government that will be made up of Palestinians along with highly qualified experts from all around the world. Hamas and other terrorist factions will play no role in the board, but they'll play no role in the governance of Gaza at all, directly or indirectly, as you know.
President Trump's plan states that if both sides agree to this proposal, the war would end immediately. You see, Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed-upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended, and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for a complete stage withdrawal. The plan also will encompass special economic zones in Gaza that will spur development to bring the region out of poverty, the immediate release of all hostages by Hamas, and the establishment of a peace authority, as he announced, headed by President Trump. The Israelis have signaled their full support for this plan, so the ball is now in the court of the Palestinians to reject or approve it. The greatest single title that history can bestow is that of peacemaker. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and I'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. If you joined us yesterday, you know that Dr. Paul K. Maurer, one of the country's foremost neurosurgeons, expert in gunshot wounds, also expert on explosive injuries, a man who lectures across the country and for the U.S. Army on those topics, went through all of the forensic online evidence regarding the murder of Charlie Kirk, and he concluded on my show that it's entirely possible that the microphone that Charlie Kirk was wearing played a substantial, perhaps a lethal role in the murder of Charlie Kirk, which would mean, just as they told us, that John F. Kennedy was shot from the front, from an elevated long-distance shot. That may not be true. The investigation is still open, but I'm among those who finds the open and shut theories of the FBI a little too pat, a little too neatly tied up. I still don't understand how it is possible that Tyler Robinson, who's alleged by the government to be the killer, shot, unassembled, reassembled his rifle, and then left it in a place where it could easily be found. Don't understand why he allegedly changed out of the clothes he was wearing while firing the fatal shot, only to change back into them for his arrest. Nor do I understand why these messages on Discord appear to me to be AI generated, and why the claims trying to tie him to the trans movement, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, appear to be largely false. So, as in the case of John F. Kennedy, where the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover wrapped up their entire investigation into John F. Kennedy's murder in 7 days flat, handing it over to 33-year-old Arlen Specter, then the deputy counsel to the Warren Commission, essentially saying, "Here, kid, rubber stamp this." I oppose this rush to judgment because none of the video evidence that we're looking at adds up, and none of it certainly confirms the government's claim of Tyler Robinson, radicalized leftist with a trans boyfriend with whom he lived, shooting from a high level and evading an intensive search. Why was the crime scene not sealed? Why the rush to remove the rear surveillance camera? Too many questions here. I urge you to go online. You can go online at WABCRadio.com and listen to the entire recording of my interview with Dr. Paul K. Maurer, one of the foremost neurosurgeons, again, most respected gunshot and explosive injury doctor in the world, if not the country. I think you should check it out. He confirms that the leveler Mike could have played a role, not as an explosive device, but basically in launching a bullet that killed Charlie Kirk. Following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, churches nationwide have reported a 15% uptick in attendance as people look to God for answers during these very trying times. The Catholic News Agency reports that many young people from Gen Z are going to church after watching viral social media clips of Charlie Kirk urging people to go to church and embrace God as a way to heal our country. Just weeks before his death, Kirk on his own radio show said, "There's revival in the Christian church. Churches are growing. Young people are flocking to the faith of God." Charlie Kirk's death has only poured fuel onto that fire. It has been a catalyzing moment that has spurred action from the public. This is not what the assassin, whoever that may be, would believe would happen, or anyone could have seen coming from the horrific events surrounding Kirk's death. He was a figure who was more beloved and renowned than many realized, an individual with an inherent goodness that won him the request of everyone except for soulless, deranged leftists. Turning Point USA is now the unquestioned tip of the spear for conservative movement. Every conservative is readying themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually to defeat the enemies of humanity, the modern America left to save America. I didn't really know Charlie Kirk after 29 FBI agents stormed my home at 6 o'clock in the morning, and after CNN had a camera crew 25 feet from the front door of my home for that humiliating arrest, Charlie Kirk reached out to me. By the way, CNN got an award from the White House Correspondents Association for their incisive investigative reporting that just led them to have a full camera crew outside my door in the pre-dawn hours of the day I was arrested. But that story's a fraud as well. I was arrested at 6:06. At 6:22 a.m., my lawyer received a text message from Sarah Murray from CNN, and she attached a draft of my criminal indictment. It had no timestamps or court markings on it, but if you looked at the metadata tags on that document, it reveals the name of the man who wrote it, therefore the name of the man who leaked it in violation of federal law, because the leaking of an unexecuted search or arrest warrant is a felony. The initials are those of Andrew Weissman. Weissman is among those who must be scooped up and prosecuted in the entire Russian collusion hoax. But he has a nefarious history going all the way back to Brooklyn, where he covered up mob murders, as many as 14 of them, lying under oath about Sammy the Bull Gravano, and who was and was not an FBI informant. Then he went on to destroy the Enron Corporation and their public accountants, Arthur Anderson. This dweeb continues to point to that case as it is a gold standard when the U.S. Supreme Court reversed all the convictions that he won 9-0 and tongue-lashed him for prosecutorial misconduct. Andrew Weissman, literally the dirtiest cop in American history. Now, of course, he's a legal analyst for MSNBC. I don't get my news from MSNBC for the same reason I don't drink out of the toilet. I predict to you now that Andrew Weissman will receive justice one way or another, either in this life or in the next one. But he is unquestionably the single most evil, devious, deceptive, dishonest federal prosecutor in U.S. history, I have a good friend working on a book and a documentary on him entitled Pitbull, the most corrupt prosecutor in U.S. history. Looking forward to that. I do think that it is important to recognize at this time that Charlie Kirk's death will actually make him bigger in life, in death, than he could ever have been in life. Along with Barry Goldwater, along with Ronald Reagan, along with Donald Trump, giants of the American conservative movement, he will be responsible for the galvanizing and mobilization of more young people into the fight for freedom than those who murdered him could ever have imagined. God bless you, Charlie Kirk. May you rest in peace. In related news, unfortunately, at least 4 people are dead after a crazed gunman targeted a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan, shooting several parishioners with a rifle before setting the building on fire. The gunman was 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford, a former Marine and Iraq War veteran. Sanford was killed by the police after they arrived on the scene. The White House has said that Sanford held extremist, anti-Mormon beliefs that led to his conducting this horrific rampage. Let's listen to this clip of White House Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
I want to express our sincere condolences to the victims and their families and all of the members of this church who were gathering on a Sunday in the United States of America to worship Jesus Christ. And a crazed gunman rammed his truck into the church and started firing at these innocent Americans. And our hearts break. The president was very quick to put out a statement completely condemning this and assuring the American people that the FBI is on the scene. And I spoke with our FBI Director, Kash Patel, bright and early this morning. He assured me and the American public that the FBI is currently executing multiple search warrants at the residences and the family homes of this perpetrator to try to get to the bottom of why he would commit such an act of evil. And the FBI is working with both state and local law enforcement, providing the full support of the federal government. And I just want to commend state and local law enforcement for their swift and incredible response. Local police officers were on the ground of this scene within minutes and neutralized this shooter, no doubt saving lives. And they should be commended. Our police officers are heroes, and this president will always respect them and support them.
They definitely were. They were there in 32 seconds, Caroline.
This is once again another mass murder. Here's the question that we still need answers to. Was this killer on psychotropic drugs? Why don't they ever answer that question? It's a question we ask here consistently, right here in the Stone Zone. Last night, the NFL announced that reggaeton singer Bad Bunny would actually headline the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, Bad Bunny is a Puerto Rican performer born Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio. He's a well-known Trump hater who claimed he would not play in the United States because of his opposition to ICE. Bad Bunny said, people from the U.S. who come see me could come here to see the show. Latinos and Puerto Ricans in the United States could also travel here or any other part of the world. But there was an issue that ICE could be outside. It's something we're talking about and we're very concerned about. Apparently, these concerns disappeared for Bad Bunny when the NFL came knocking with a fistful of cash for the artist to play their upcoming halftime show. Bad Bunny performs a gutturized mix of U.S. hip-hop and rhythmic Latino music. It's not my cup of tea, but maybe it's yours. He's particularly popular throughout the world, which is the target demographic of the NFL. They're looking to expand beyond America, regularly hosting NFL games in places like Germany, Britain, and Brazil. The NFL is once again spitting in the face of their American fans. They have apparently not learned the lesson from the fallout they received over Colin Kaepernick, remember him, and others who were kneeling during the national anthem. It may be time for right-thinking Americans of common sense to revolt against the NFL yet again, and by that we mean business. Don't give them your dollars, don't watch their shows, don't support their broadcasting. These actions can have results. Meanwhile, the state of Oregon is suing President Donald Trump to prevent the deployment of the National Guard to the state. President Trump has signaled that he would be sending the Guard into Portland to stop the crime, filth, and degeneracy that have been allowed to reign over the city due to feckless Democrat leadership. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek I'm glad that we've established that that's a woman, because I swear, based on the video I watched, that the governor was a man. The president does not have the authority to deploy federal troops on state soil. There is no insurrection or threat to public safety that necessitates military intervention in Portland or any other city in our state. Our city is a far cry from the war-ravaged community he has posted on social media. Here's the problem, Governor. You don't have the authority to make that decision. President Donald Trump does. The President of the United States' first responsibility is to maintain order and the safety of Americans. If Governor Tina Kotek actually physically interferes without carrying out their duties, well, she would be subject to arrest. But so far, all we have is crazy left rhetoric. Anybody who can go online and watch what's actually going on in the ground in Portland understands that there is an insurrection, there is a danger to public safety, and that President Trump has the full authority to mobilize the National Guard. The lawsuit filed by Oregon argues that President Trump's decision to deploy the Guard is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act and the 10th Amendment. Portland is a national hub for Antifa, of course, and the Antifa terrorists there have rioted continuously to prevent ICE agents from being able to detain and deport illegal immigrants. The Democrat leadership in the state are on the side of Antifa. Therefore, they're supporting domestic terrorists, and they look the other way whenever possible. President Trump is not going to allow this to happen, in my opinion. He will find a way to bring about order in Portland and other liberal-dominated cities across the nation. And there's really not much the far-left Democrats can do about it. What's interesting, in every one of these places, whether it is Washington, D.C., or the other major places such as Memphis, the people who actually live there cheer on the National Guard restoring order to their communities and their neighborhoods. I suspect the people who actually live in Portland, the hardworking middle-class citizens, they probably also cheer this action by the president. Above all, President Donald Trump can always be counted on to put the American people first and put their safety and the safety of their communities and neighborhoods first. I predict that it is only a matter of time before he moves the National Guard more fully into Chicago, which is swiftly becoming the murder capital of the world. You're tuned in to the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because we'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
And he's a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
President Trump, over the weekend, released a video talking about the ability of cannabis, THC, also known as marijuana, to revolutionize senior health care. The video, posted by President Trump, talked about the use of CBD oil to alleviate pain, lower stress, and result in better sleep. CBD is the non-psychoactive compound found in cannabis. It does not get you high, and it is the source of most of the medicinal benefits from the cannabis plant. We have always understood that President Donald Trump was a supporter of states' rights on the question of the legalization of cannabis for medicinal purposes. That has always been his position, going all the way back to the 2016 campaign. I myself have been a major advocate for President Trump reclassifying or declassifying cannabis. Right now, cannabis is considered a Schedule I drug along with heroin, NDMA, and LSD. President Trump has already made it clear that he is considering making it a Schedule III drug, which would make it allowable for medicinal use. That would also solve a number of the banking issues for those companies who sell cannabis quite legally in states where it is medicinally legal. Cannabis has already been legalized in more than 38 states, and the feds have already relaxed many of their efforts to interdict the drug. Rescheduling cannabis would allow cannabis sellers to have access again to the banking system and will further put a stake through the heart of the underground drug trade. This particular move by the president is particularly unpopular with big pharma. You see, they would much prefer to sell you pharmaceutical drugs that do far greater damage. It's really only a matter of common sense. Alcohol is probably far more damaging to the human system than cannabis, even in the full sense of marijuana, could ever be. Yet alcohol sales are legal, they're regulated, and they're taxed by the states. So why not cannabis? Far less damaging than OxyContin for pain, for example. I myself became a convert to the legalization of marijuana when my own father was dying of cancer, when he was wasting away with no appetite and in horrific pain. I realize now that only what was then the illegal use of cannabis alleviated his suffering when his time came. And I have no qualms about my sister and I deciding to get him the cannabis that eased the final days of his life. I hope President Trump does either reclassify or, even better, declassify cannabis and does it now. It's interesting that the Democrats always talk about this, but under Barack Obama, they had both houses and a Democrat president, and they did nothing. I pray that President Trump will make a very different decision. Talk about it here on the show. In fact, I think we'll talk about it more. In the meantime, thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone, and until tomorrow, God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?